Well, greetings, everyone. My name is Eric Friedman. I'm the Executive Director of the Waterbury Valley Chamber of Commerce, and we're here today for our Best of Route 100 Regional Restaurant Meeting. So thanks, everyone, for coming to participate. We really appreciate that. Just to give you a little bit of background, the Waterbury Valley Chamber and the Stowe Area Association and Revitalizing Waterbury came together about a year and a half ago when we realized that our organizations had a lot in common and that collaboration could be potentially mutually beneficial. And the pandemic really accelerated that and made the benefits a lot more immediate. So we jumped at that opportunity. Since that time, we applied for $30,000 in grants collectively, and we developed the foundation for what we hope will be a collaboration to promote the region long into the future. This is something that we wanted to do prior to the pandemic, and like I said, this is something we really saw this as a way to kind of accelerate it. We realized that our collective outdoor recreational assets are the real basis for our partnership. Visitors take advantage of these assets already. And our visitors go back and forth and obviously go through Waterbury in between Mad River Valley and Stowe. And our goal is to use these assets to draw more people to our region generally for the benefit of everybody. Our organizations also see the opportunity to combine our voices on legislative issues and to share educational and business-oriented programming. These are things that our organizations do independently, and we figured that we could do a lot more together for everyone's benefit by working together. And our goal today is to get a conversation going among this very important sector to our economy, the restaurants, and seek input from you folks and how we can benefit you and your businesses going forward. So I'd first like to start by introducing our partners in this. Karen Nevin from Revitalizing Waterbury. Karen, you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody.
A little bit about.
If you don't know what Revitalizing Waterbury is, we're a community development organization, and we concern ourselves about a number of things: economic development, marketing and promotion, and what our town looks like. Economic development and promotion is very much tied to our partnership and why we want to work together with the other towns.
Well, thanks, Karen. And our other partner is Carrie Simmons from the Stowe Area Association. And Carrie, you want to introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you do?
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Simmons. I run Stowe Area Association. We're also called Go Stowe. And our primary focus is destination marketing, as well as other entities around. We run a central res. We also have a visitor center and help support the community, the business community. So I was super excited for this partnership and have really valued it over the course of the pandemic and excited to continue it. So thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Karen and Carrie. Please know that if you, as things develop through this conversation, if you have any questions, please use the chat function, and we're going to have a Q&A at the end. We can just, like I said, keep questions queued up in there. As I mentioned in what we sent out to this community, our restaurant and hospitality community has suffered a lot over the last year. And it's been pretty disruptive economically. And more so than we probably ever experienced. And as we look towards the continued reopening of our economy in the vital summer and fall seasons and out beyond that, it's really important for the restaurant sector to stand together and support one another. So to this end, we organized this meeting to benefit our local restaurants. And our goal here is to inform you, incubate some ideas, create opportunities, and bring this really important sector together. So with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. We tried to get representatives from each of our geographic regions, as well as some experts. So we have 3 dining/beverage businesses. Claudia Nelson, who's the marketing coordinator for Idletyme Brewing Company in Stowe, is with us. Mark Frier is the owner of the Reservoir Restaurant and Taproom in Waterbury, as well as the Bench and Tre Amigo in Stowe. And he also owns Big Tree Brewing and is the chair of the Waterbury Select Board. And I don't know when Mark has time for anything else. I'm glad he was able to find a few moments to be here. Anna Dan is here from the Hideaway. She is also the owner of Sage Restaurant in the Mad River Valley. And she's also the chair of the board of the Mad River Valley Chamber of Commerce. We also have Amy Spear, who's the vice president of tourism and marketing for the Vermont Chamber, and she's also the liaison for the Chamber and the Vermont Independent Restaurant Association. And we also have Austin Davis, who's the government affairs manager for the Lake Champlain Regional Chamber, who has been doing yeoman's work representing the business community in the state with the legislature. And, you know, for someone that's been working with doing a lot of the legislative stuff, it's been amazing to watch him and learn from him and his knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes. It's been really, really eye-opening for me, that is for sure. So with that, I'd like to start with having each of our panelists just give take a minute or two just to introduce yourselves and get a little sense of how you see the reopening going so far and how things are going from your perspective. So let's start with Claudia, if we can.
Yeah. Hi, guys. So I'm Claudia Nelson, or Tellez as the little screen says. You can call me Claudia Nelson. So I do marketing, events, social media, odds and ends at Idletyme. I'm kind of here today and I'm really excited about this, coming kind of from an event perspective. Definitely this season is, and I don't know how many of you are really going full steam with events, but for us, it's getting pretty wild. So definitely is figuring out this summer and how events are going to work. As far as reopening, it's really exciting, tentatively exciting, cautious optimism for July 4th. From an event perspective, I guess, throughout this whole thing, my biggest thing was kind of those transition periods, working around having everything seated, masks on if you're not seated at the table. And then, of course, the other reason why I'm really interested is to meet you guys. I'm sort of new. I got this job maybe a year and a half ago and the pandemic started, and I've been working a lot with Stowe area, and I love what they do. And I know that we've kind of been growing our family. So if you guys have a moment and you want to put, what businesses you represent, it'd be really cool. Because I'm kind of new to the game, I guess, in Stowe. And also the last thing from my perspective is I'm getting a lot of overflow with events. And at this point, I'm not really sure who's comfortable offering events this summer, who's kind of, focusing on other aspects of their business. So if, you're interested in hosting events and you happen to have slots this summer, I have a good chunk of rehearsal dinners and welcome parties that I am not able to accommodate just because of the influx of everybody who's rescheduled and everybody who's inquiring this year. So if that's something you're interested in, I can put my email in the chat, which I'll do after I'm done with my introduction. And then if you would like to say, hey, we have space, we're interested in doing events this summer. It's something I'd be interested in. I'd love to know. I'm always looking for other places that not only have availability, but are comfortable accommodating events and just sharing the love, because I'm all set here. And I guess that's me. So hello, everyone.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Claudia. Really appreciate that. Mark Frier, as he mentioned, is the owner of the Reservoir Taproom in Waterbury and the Bench and Trey Amigos and Big Tree Brewing. Mark, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Not much else to add other than definitely been part of the Vermont and national push for help and aid, whether it's the state grants or now we're trying to transition to legislative action on certain aspects that Amy can probably speak to more than I can. So yeah, pretty knowledgeable on PPP and employee retention tax credits and how to maximize that. So I'm interested in trying to help share some of that because it might not be on some radar. Other than that, I think having probably similar struggles of staffing up It's exciting to think of a completely open restaurant, but it's also terrifying. So interested to hear different ideas on labor and where maybe we can find employees, but I don't know if there's really an answer to that, but I'm happy to help however I can.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I heard something about the employees being and staffing up being an issue. I've heard that once or twice in the last few months. So Anna Dan from Matter Valley and the Hideaway and Sage. Anna, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good to see everybody. And much like everyone else, I'm very excited about opening more fully. We've kept the Hyde open the entire pandemic at the maximum that was allowable by the state at the time. Sage was closed, reopened in December. And we are now, as everybody knows, in a little mud season. But when we reopen, at least in the Valley, it sounds like a ton of restaurants opening. So the labor issue is of utmost concern to us. And from a state standpoint and a legislative standpoint, incentives for folks to go back to work. I think that's something that, I'm very interested in continuing to work on. And it sounds like we'll be calling you Claudia because we definitely have room for events, but I think that's one of the things in the Valley that we like to see accelerate as much as I think Stowe, maybe it's a little bit ahead of us in getting all the events back. So I'm glad to be here, and I thank everyone who has worked on all of the legislative moves up to now to get us through with the PVP and grant and everything else. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. I appreciate you taking part. Next up is Amy Spear from the Vice President of Tourism and Marketing for Vermont Chamber.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here today. I have to admit, Eric, you are right on unifying through outdoor rec. I've logged many, many miles up in the area mountain biking. When I used to work up in Stowe, I often biked on the way home. So definitely the connection with outdoor recreation there. So I guess while I have a restaurant hat on today, just to put it out there for folks that, while we are a conduit with VTIR, we do also advocate, or in my role, we're really advocating for the entire tourism and hospitality sector. So the Vermont Chamber, just for reference, we have 1,200 members with close to half of our membership falling in the tourism and hospitality sector. So as many of you can imagine, we've been very busy on the advocacy front over the last year, but I'm really interested to hear from everybody the boots on the ground experience and what you're looking for in the summer, in addition to, giving any sort of legislative updates that folks might have questions on.
Thanks so much, Amy. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate, someone that I've been working with Amy for a long time for the last year, and really appreciate everything that you have done and the team at Vermont Chamber has done. It's been really remarkable, and so thank you. Austin Davis, who's the Lake Champlain Chamber of Commerce's Government Affairs Manager, who has been a wicked busy guy of late. Austin, welcome.
Thanks, Eric. Great to be with you folks. You folks particularly are my favorite place to recreate. I'm a WADA member. I log a lot of hours on the trails around there. Love Katy Hill, ski Stowe, and love to get up and do a little front country uphill action in the Valley. So love to be here with you folks. For those folks who've worked with me, you'll know my kind of rather depressing motto is always expectations are a down payment on disappointment. So I always kind of caution expectations while we're looking at the time ahead. And certainly during the COVID crisis, I think that motto has been a really good one to live by, as things have not always been sunny on the other side of the tunnel. But I would say that I'm actually feeling optimistic for the first time in a little while. I'd say that the vaccination trends are going well, which are, we've advocated really hard to have vaccination trends be the benchmarks by which reopening happens. So, those are trending well, and I'd encourage those of you who are on the call, encourage your employees to get vaccinated, because that just adds to the reopening. Encourage your friends and family. And I think folks might have seen in our newsletter last week that the IRS has some new tax credits to help people give a day off for their employees to get out and vaccinated. So, please make use of those, get us open feeling optimistic about revenge travel, revenge tourism, revenge recreation, as the industry's calling it now. You know, people have been cooped up for a year and they've got some disposable income, some of them, if they haven't lost their job, and they're itching to get out into fun places like the places you folks do business. So I'm excited to see that, and that gives me some optimism. You know, there's also the reality though that the assistance isn't really coming. We're doing our best effort to try to get more financial assistance, but it's a slog. I think a lot of legislators think the pandemic's over and you folks survived, so mission accomplished. And they're not seeing the deep economic scarring that we're all seeing on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, we're going to be testifying on Wednesday on economic recovery grants. And then, you know, I got my concerns about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund and its ability to be quickly oversubscribed for those of you who are looking forward to joining that. I mean, definitely go for it. I just have my concerns. And I think, you know, that's going to take some national level mobilization to get that backfilled. And then there's the legislation. As I said, you know, we're testifying on Wednesday on the recovery grants, trying to get more money than even the governor proposed with his $50 million for that. Pushing back really hard on the taxation of forgiven PPP loans. Folks probably saw the call to action. I know Eric pushed a lot of that out to you folks. Contact your legislators in the House. We need to get peer pressure and get them to really lean on their colleagues on the Ways and Means Committee to not tax those forgiven loans. And then, you know, there's the ongoing issues around the UI Trust Fund that, you know, we're not out of the woods yet on those things. And we're trying to keep, you know, your payroll tax rate there at a lower level as you come out and are dealing with the economic scarring of this crisis. So I look forward to talking to you folks about all this and answering any questions and taking some direction from you folks on what you need. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Austin. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Is you know, Austin asked for, you know, he really wants to hear from you folks. You know, the direction that you'd like to see us going. That he should be going, as well as what our organization should be going. So I think maybe just to start, we really wanted to try to get engagement from the participants on the call. And if anyone has any comments to start or questions, does anyone have anything they'd like to say to kick us off?
I'd actually like to circle back. I know, because we're all kind of looking for, you know, staff. And I know personally what we're doing at Idletyme is we're reaching out to a lot of high school kids. Center for Technology is a huge program in Vermont, and they have one in Essex. I believe there's one in Central Vermont, Barrie. And these tech programs, I'm an alumni from the Essex one, but I know that they have really awesome like cooking programs. So I would say, you know, that's one avenue I've been kind of reaching out to is students. You know, these are seniors and juniors who are getting ready, who want to be in the restaurant industry. So that could be a really good resource if anyone's interested as far as that goes. But I mean, that's what we're doing. We're reaching out to a lot of high schools and to get that like hosts, front of the house. And then of course, support staff, your bussers, food runners, expo. So this is kind of my little pro tip for that, or at least that's the avenue we're going.
Excellent. Anyone else? I think the unemployment issue or the employment issue is something that I keep hearing about from a lot of folks. You know, one of the things I do keep hearing is that businesses are feeling as though their employees are being disincentivized to come back to work. Is that an accurate statement? Is that something that you folks are, and to what extent? I'd just be really curious to know about that. And also, is there anything from an organizational perspective that we can do? Wow, everyone's being all quiet about this one all of a sudden.
Brian from Toast and Eggs and Filling Station. I have a few comments about employment. Like Claudia mentioned, we are employing a lot of high school kids currently. We actually have trained a couple to work in one of my kitchens. I'm a little disheartened by the amount of everyone is looking for people. I look at how many people are advertising, and it's insane. And there's like these $1,500 sign-on bonuses and these $2,000 retention bonuses. I've actually gone out and I'm bringing in 2 chefs from California that I used to work with, that I'm friends with, and they're like, yeah, I'd love to spend the summer in Vermont. So I'm like bringing in people from the other side of the country, and I'm going to house them. I'm also applying for J1 internships. So I'm going to bring in people from other countries, and I'm going to find housing for them as well. It's so competitive, and the local worker, I think, is not incentivized to get back to work. They don't necessarily have to. But I mean, do you want that employee anyway? I guess is something you'd have to ask yourself. So the struggle's real, I have 16-year-olds working in my kitchen. Fortunately, they're really competent. And Claudia, thank you. I did not know about those programs that were going on, so I will definitely start contacting them, because the young people in Vermont are extremely motivated, which is super helpful. But we're really missing that working class employee, or that if they don't have to, why would they, kind of thing. Anyway, that's what I'm doing. The high school thing, I'm going international, and I'm bringing in old co-workers that used to work for me from the West Coast, and that's how we're going to get through this summer, which is the busy season for both of my restaurants. Wintertime's easy, sales are down and it's like you can skate by, but summertime, I need to have almost 40 employees between the 2 restaurants. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you taking the time to be here. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments on the employment debate? One of the things, again, I've heard from so many folks kind of saying what Brian is saying, is that employees are not coming back because there's no incentive. And it's not that I question it, but I just really want to, I want confirmation that is in fact true.
Hi, I can also weigh in. This is Katrina from PK Coffee. We have found that a lot of people who used to work for us, I think, have actually moved back out of state. So not only is it hard to find good people to work, it seems like some of the folks that were working for us are no longer in state. So I don't know if that's a statistic that we could study, or if other people have experienced this, but especially with housing being so expensive in our area, it's definitely been a struggle. And in Stowe, we're only open 5 days a week right now, just because restarting and rebuilding the business, we can't find enough folks. So.
Yeah, and I will chime in to say we've definitely had this, and since we've stayed open, we've had folks through the pandemic that were just not comfortable working, and I totally understand that. And we worked with those people to give them as much room to make them as comfortable. And now it's a matter of calling everybody back to work. And as you well know, once you call somebody back to work, their ability to collect unemployment diminishes. So I've been trying to walk the fine line of not forcing people that are not comfortable yet, but on the flip side, getting everybody back to work and off the unemployment roster. So I think that's one way to deal with it. But even if everybody came back, there's still not enough workers. So I think this is a bigger state issue that we have to deal with probably in the next year.
Hey, Eric, it's Jason from Worthy. And hello, everybody. What the state did on Saturday, I believe, was, trying to hold people accountable for actually looking for jobs. So I think the state is recognizing that we don't have any employees. I mean, we're struggling in all 3 of mine. Housing is another major issue. Like the people that want to come here can't find a place to live. There's no apartments, there's no nothing. So it is really a much larger problem than just finding an employee. If I had a huge house, I'd have people living in it all day, but I don't. So luckily we found people down south, but up here in the Mad River Valley area, it's a lot more difficult than at the other two restaurants. So I don't know if that's location wise, population based, or I'm not really quite sure on why that is happening, but I still need cooks here, and I'm sure Brian does, and Mark and everybody else that's on. The high schoolers are doing great, but they're all in sports right now, which is really good for them. It's almost easier just staying open 4 days a week with the staff we have than it is to try to open more and do more. So that's kind of where we're looking right now.
Thanks, Jason. Austin, what's your view on this and what you're seeing from the state level perspective?
Yeah, I'm certainly nothing new that we're hearing here, and I think it's always important to remember that we did have a workforce deficit before the pandemic. The pandemic has obviously created a new dynamic added to that situation. There was an issue around workforce housing before the pandemic. All these things have just been made worse. We're certainly pushing, and I know the Vermont Chamber is as well, pushing the legislature to make long-term investments with the large amount of money we're getting in federal dollars from relief packages, investments in things like workforce housing. It's not going to do anything necessarily for you folks in the short term. In the long term, though, we can start building up that housing stock to bring those folks. On the short term, I think we're looking at right now, as of Friday, we're at 55.8% of the population vaccinated. By June, hopefully that's at 75%, which is pretty much close to what your folks in public health are saying is close to your herd immunity. And at that point, I think it's pretty evident that the Department of Labor will probably put the workforce requirement back in effect, if not sooner. And I think a lot of the conversations about people who are being told to return to work and what that means, but there are a number of folks out there that their job is not back, and so they're on UI with no work search requirement and no employer to call them back. And without a work search requirement, they're not having to go out and look for it. So when vaccination got to a point where the legislature can feel as if they're not putting people at risk who are unvaccinated by telling them to go out into the public and find a job, we'll likely have that. Also, some of the provisions in Act 91 that could have someone remove themselves from the workforce or be removed from the workforce during the pandemic will likely expire. When we see the governor's executive order rescinded in state of emergency, which again, we might be in July. When that happens with Act 91, then we can see a situation where folks are kind of incentivized to get back into the workforce. I think there'll be provisions around FCRA, which might allow folks to create some flexibility around employment into the future. And that's not great, but it can help you meet a person halfway. And I just think, there's just a lot of structural issues that we're going to have to keep making a dent on that were already around before the pandemic. And, we're just going to keep working on that for you folks.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. And, I don't want this to become a discussion entirely focused on UI. One of the other big issues that we've been dealing with has been the PPP taxability issue. Are the businesses on the call? I'd really just want to know, are you clear on where this is at? And have we been able to get that information? We've been trying, I know from my end, we've been trying to get that information out to you folks. Are people clear on where we're at with that? I'll take the silence as a yes. Is there any updates on that, Austin?
Not entirely at this time. I mean, it's definitely shifted in the Senate. It seems that the Senate is, backed away from the proposal. They're fairly of the mind that the vision in Act 9 or H315 was very much placeholder language, and they always wanted to return to it. I think, as with anything, it's easy to say something like that after the fact, say the advocacy was not needed. We would have done that anyway. We have our doubts, and many members are on record beforehand saying that they thought PPP should be taxed. The attention now kind of turns to the Senate, and to the House from the Senate. We're expecting that the miscellaneous tax bill will be sent over from the Senate to the House with this language added to it that would, make PPP not taxable. And at that time, we think the committee is going to find some way to try to tax PPP. They've thrown around the idea of not allowing people to deduct expenses or payroll that they paid with PPP, or finding a certain amount at which they can tax, or just something. We're not really interested in negotiating on how to tax PPP. For us, it's a flat answer. PPP should not be taxed. It's a government program that had no state involvement at all. It's a transaction it's a lifeline sent from from the government to you at a time of need. And it's, equivalent to disaster assistance. And it's wholly inappropriate for the legislature to kind of work its way into that relationship between you and the federal government with that lifeline and try to take a piece of it. Nonetheless, it's against the rules of the program to reserve money to pay income taxes anyway. So it's a paradoxical tax in which if you do as they want and you hold money from the PPP loan to pay income tax, then it's no longer actually a forgiven grant, it's a loan. And guess what? They can't tax loans. So it kind of is a heads they win, tails you lose kind of situation that they're trying to set up here. And I really just encourage all of you to reach out to your representatives in the House and express that. And I can put my information in the chat if you'd like to talk more about it.
Thanks, Austin. Amy, do you have any thoughts on the legislative end of it? Because I know with your acting as liaison with the Independent Restaurant Association, just appreciate to hear maybe your perspective on that.
I guess, I think Austin covered that portion well, but I can move over to Restaurant Revitalization Fund if you'd like. I think that's probably something that's top of mind for a lot of folks. Does that sound good?
Yeah, please.
All right, great. So I guess I don't want to be like the bearer of bad news, but I really want to make sure that I temper expectations on what may come with the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. So, I think an absolute known here in Vermont and across the country is that the depth of the economic pain that the restaurant industry is feeling right now. So just to add a number to it that is staggering is restaurants have lost $270 billion nationally over the last year. So you take that $270 billion that restaurants have lost over the last year, and you look at a $28.6 billion fund. What that means is that fund will be exhausted very, very quickly. So this is why we have and are continuing to urge the Vermont legislature to be supportive of the Economic Recovery Grant Program that was in place and replenishing those funds. I want to just note that the federal relief programs really only begin to address, small business devastation. So the SBA, even the SBA is warning that the $28.6 billion is going to be exhausted in a matter of days due to the national demand. So again, if you take away two numbers to contextualize how quickly it'll go, 270 billion in losses, 28.6 billion fund. So that just helps to put that into perspective. I think most eligible restaurants will not receive the grants due to the national demand. So again, going back to state relief programs are still critically important to the restaurant industry. There's definitely a lot of work at the national level. Mark, I'm guessing you're involved on the IRC level with this, as well as getting that RRF fund replenished, because SBA has set it up so you can see how quickly it's drained. But all of that to say, it's still important to apply to put your name in, because there are a few mechanisms that are in place. So I guess I'll pause actually before I go into a long rant and see if Mark, if you want to add anything in there, or if anyone else wants to add something, because I don't want to spend the whole time talking.
No, I think you mentioned it. The most important thing is that the rule book that we originally heard of, like anyone can apply and then they'll look at, and maybe you'll get a portion of it. Now we're hearing that it's going to be first come, first serve. I think it's the most important part of that. I would assume they're going to add more funding, but at this point, it's still an unknown.
Yeah, I'm hearing Schumer is indicating an interest to replenish it, but yeah, it's unknown. There's until it gets across the finish line. I think Austin, you said it well, to just temper your expectations on this. But I guess I do want to mention, I guess I can go into some tools for application, just for resourcing the folks on the call. Austin, I saw you unmuted if you wanted to add.
Yeah, I was just going to add in, I think everything you said is incredibly right. And I would just say it's important to apply to most any program you can. And, for example, we just got in H315, a proposal for gap recovery grants that was meant, primarily for the folks who received nothing. And we were able to late in the legislative debate on that bill, put in, that there's a second tier to it, so that we'll prioritize with the limited funds, people who got absolutely nothing. If there's anything left, there's, the opportunity for folks to go into that program. Obviously that program is going to be oversubscribed really quick. That's kind of the point. When a program gets oversubscribed, a $10 million program gets oversubscribed to the tune of a couple $100 million, it puts the emphasis back on the legislative bodies to actually get back to that need. So, as Amy was saying, you should definitely apply and, understand that you might not get it, but you applying gets you in line for future funding and also signals the need for more funding to legislators.
Yeah, and I guess just jumping into some, just to help ease into the application process for folks, the first 3 weeks, SBA will accept applications from all applicants. So everyone can get their applications into the hopper, but they're only going to be processing applications for women, veterans, and disadvantaged businesses. So that's that first 3 weeks of the program. Something that was an unknown going into this, that probably at the end of March, if anyone participated on our webinar, that is now a known, is gross receipts will not include PPP loans, EIDL loans. So I guess the most important part, the Vermont grants don't count towards your gross receipts. There was a lot of, I guess, ambiguity around that at the beginning, and that has been clarified. So your Vermont grants that you might have received, those economic recovery grants, don't count in there. Something that was important that was released at the end of last week on Friday, the SBA released the names of your point of sale service providers that can utilize that you can be utilizing for the RRF grant applications. So that unlike the shuttered venue grant application, the SBA has tried to make this a very easy process for restaurants at any point possible. So while the funds will go quickly, they're trying to make sure that it's a very easy process. And I'll put a bunch of resources into the chat. But if you feel any, I guess, stress or anxiety over applying for these grants, I would highly recommend reaching out to your RDC, because they do have technical assistance available to help you get your financials in order that you need to have together to apply. And then they also might be able to help you through the application process. So I'll stop there and put some resources into the chat for folks to read.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Amy. I'd like to try to maybe steer the conversation to a little bit of a different direction.
Eric, I just wanted to let you know there's Heidi has her hands up.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Hey, Eric, thanks for inviting me and participating in this call, and to all of you. I just have a quick question. I'm trying to, it's just full disclosure, it's really hard. I usually pride myself on being able to keep track of what's going on in every committee throughout the legislative session. This session has been really difficult because it's Zoom. And I'm just curious, I heard something this morning about some problematic developments in Senate appropriations with regard to the grants for hospitality, for the hospitality industry. And given the challenges with the restaurant revitalization program, the SBA program, I'm wondering if what if anybody on this call might know this problematic development that has occurred. I think it's a reduction in the amount that the governor has proposed, a significant reduction. And I'm just wondering if there's a strategy moving forward. I'd like to get obviously the tourism caucus involved, but just curious if anybody can tell me, because that clearly is what one of the things aside from workforce is actually these additional funds. So I'm just curious if anybody happens to know.
Yeah, I can lend some perspective. Last week, the Senate Economic Development Committee was working on their appropriations request letter, and they were told by the chair of appropriations in the Senate that they would only have about 42 million in order to allocate across all of their objectives. They were able to bump that up just a little bit, but what they came to was more or less 40 million in economic recovery grants, and 20 million would be this year, and another 20 million would come next year of ARPA money or American Rescue Plan Act money. Frankly, I don't think that if they don't appropriate money to business grants this year, they're not going to appropriate at all. We've pushed back and requested for more than the 50 million that the governor actually indicated. The governor's 50 million in the actual drafted document supporting his 50 million, he actually cited 500 million in unmet need in the state of Vermont. At the same time, actually, a report came out that the ski areas themselves had about 100 million in unmet need. And, they indicated that could even be more than that 500 million. Yet they kind of looked at some of the things coming down the pike from the feds and thought, well, the restaurant revitalization fund will satisfy some of that need. As we said, we're kind of skeptical that it will. They also thought PPP might satisfy some of that need. I think a lot of folks in Montpelier misconstrue what PPP is. From the perspective of the Lake Chamber, PPP is a parallel unemployment insurance system that just keeps people on their original payrolls and with their benefits and their full wages, rather than putting them on the state, safety net. So there was some misconceptions out there. So we've been pushing back along with a lot of other businesses, the Vermont Chamber included, the Vermont Ski Area Association, Main Street Alliance, Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility. It's just been an ongoing pressure. And over the weekend, they've actually recommitted to doing some testimony in Senate Economic that hadn't been done on this issue. So some of us will be in there tomorrow, and some of us will be in there Wednesday morning pushing back and trying to get more money. It's incredibly difficult, though, as Representative Sherman, that once the Appropriations Committee kind of assigns the tranche to the Committee of Jurisdiction, it's hard for the Committee of Jurisdiction. So we're really going to, in the next week, mobilize to get folks in the House agitated and pushing leadership to allocate a larger tranche to economic recovery grants. And from our perspective, they could allocate the 50 million presented by the governor. The way H315 or Act 9 was written, after the money that the last grant program had is expended and exhausted, they have to send a report to the legislature to explain how much they're oversubscribed. We suggested language that would at that time have them give that report actually straight to the Joint Fiscal Committee, give the Joint Fiscal Committee the ability to meet over the summer, and then appropriate ARPA dollars back to the program to cover everybody who is oversubscribed. And so that's our hope, is that in the House, that language can be added in, and we'll be making that ask again this week.
Okay. I don't want to get into the weeds about it. I was just curious as to where we were and what we need to do over the next 5 days anyway. But thanks. That's great, Austin.
Great. Any other questions about legislative issues, unemployment, those kinds of things? Great. Like I said, as I was thinking, kind of taking this into a little bit of a different direction. Carrie and Karen and I have been working really hard, and our teams at our various organizations have been working hard to collaborate. And I'm kind of curious to hear from the different restaurateurs that are out there. If you see ways that our region can collaborate more, or why their collaboration might not work, and whether it might be worth the effort. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I live in Moortown, and I'm on the Duxbury end of Moortown, so I'm actually quite close to Waterbury. And I go to Waterbury. We go out to eat in Waterbury, and we go up to Stowe a lot. And when I'm working in our visitor center, people are coming in and visiting from Stowe and visiting from Waterbury and coming down here for the day. And I know that people are from here or going up there. From your perspectives, what do you think the opportunities for collaboration are, or maybe do you think it's not worth the effort? Anyone have any opinions on that?
Hi, Eric, I'd like to share just really quick. This is Karen from Revitalizing Waterbury. One of the ways we are collaborating is cross-promoting our different organizations on our websites. So if there's a section on going out to eat, there will be a link that says, for more, check out Revitalizing or Discover Waterbury or Stowe Area Association. At least that's what, so that's one of the ways that we are just doing a little like cross promotion to make sure everybody knows everything that's going on.
Yeah, thank you for that, Karen. From my perspective, also just throwing this out there, is I worked at Mad River Glen for many years, more than I care to remember, and I had really close relationships with folks in the ski industry, and I never thought I would ever see the day where folks from the Stowe Area Association would be posting links to the Mad River Valley and vice versa. And I am just so pleased that Carrie and her team there have embraced that so much, and know that our people here in the Valley really appreciate it as well. And we understand that. I mean, we don't live in silos here, and we live near silos, but not in them. And I think it's really great that I think that this region is more attractive to visitors collectively than we are individually. So how do people feel about that?
I actually had a couple ideas. I've been kind of sitting on this one for a minute. I think my first one, I think the biggest thing, at least from us, outdoor dining is still huge. And I think even with restrictions lifting, that need to be outside, I don't think is going to go away. If anything, it's going to build, especially with the retention and like what we're seeing and everybody like wanting to get out there. I know that the Stowe area, you guys do like awesome blogs about like places to eat or places to, grab a drink or a cocktail. I was thinking of maybe putting a blog for our site, maybe like outdoor dining places or, kind of ways, we can, you can have a creative outdoor experience or something along those lines. The other thing is I get inquiries. People ask all the time, like, do we do live music? We don't. It's something we're moving away from because there are so many spaces that do it and do it really well. But maybe setting up like something about like who does live music, who does live music outside, there's some of the like the known ones, but I feel like there are a lot of really cool places that, people don't really know about that could cater to live music or have really wonderful like outdoor dining spaces this summer. And maybe trying to figure out something around those lines, because I get that question a lot. And I think that people know a little less about, everything around us than we might think they do. So I think really focusing on music, where to listen to it, where to go outside. I think that would be something really cool. We should maybe highlight sooner rather than later, since we're getting back into this kind of nice weather, fingers crossed. I know it's been it's been back and forth this week, but I am confident that we're gonna get through April and maybe May's sun. So I don't know, that's kind of my 2 cents with that.
Thanks, Claudia. Any other thoughts on that? I mean, I think that's one of the things that, you know, I was thinking about, even, you know, again, regionally speaking, what's going on at Camp Mead over in Middlesex is something that I've just been surprised how many people in the Valley aren't quite aware of what's going on there. And it's, you know, literally just down the road from us and just down the road from Waterbury as well. Any other thoughts on collaboration or not? Or other opportunities?
I think
Mark.
Mark.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things coming out of this is going to be advocacy in Montpelier. I think this is one of the first times where a lot of us that own similar businesses now might find their voice in Montpelier. And I just feel like that would be one of the best things that could come out of this is understanding how to use these chambers and other business groups to all start to utilize their outreach to help push different agendas that we believe are going to help our businesses. I think for a long time, we've all been so in our silos that it's hard to find that advocacy. And I think there's some good energy out of that. And I think there's more talk about legislation than I've ever experienced myself, just being in part of these groups. And I think that losing that would be a bummer. So I think that's going to be something that we should really try to figure out how to. I know there's communication happening, but how can we, if we identify a certain thing that Austin or Amy are very well aware of, how do we quickly get that information out and similar messaging, and how can we do that better, I guess is one of my thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Claudia.
I was just a question for Mark. As someone like me who maybe is pretty new to this and doesn't really know where to go or who to ask, what would you recommend next steps? Like for me, I think I want to gather more information about the surrounding areas and just definitely have things for people that reach out to me for any range of different activities or suggestions.
Yeah, so there's the Vermont Independent Restaurant Group that now falls under the Vermont Chamber. I think that's one of the most active ones in terms of legislative action. Whereas Carrie's had SAA, but we talked a lot about how to navigate. Are we trying to talk about legislation in our group? I think that's something that each individual business organization needs to kind of figure out at how much lobbying do they want to be a part of? And if they don't, then how do we make sure their members can participate? And how do we make sure that, you know, I fear sometimes that might get lost, where if you're not participating in VTIR, then maybe you're not hearing it through other organizations. And so I think that would be something that's important. But that group, there's a website, I think Amy could speak to that a little bit more for VTIR, but and it's hard because I have 66,000 unread emails, and how do you keep up with all this? I think it's just relying on the folks that are really involved in Montpelier and understanding quickly what their needs are. Like when Austin said, reach out to your legislature. Some of us are doing that, but the more that we do that in a very consistent message, I think we can get a lot more done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things, you know, speaking to what you said, Mark, my takeaway from the past year has been how much I learned about the legislative process. And this, I think, this year, I think, has been an unusual one for sure. But we've been more engaged than we've ever have been as an organization. And I know that our members are appreciative of that, and that we are vetting a lot of information and getting the curated information that's most apropos to them, so they don't have to go through all 66,000 emails and stay informed. And I think that you'll be glad to know that in both Carrie and jump in if I'm misquoting you folks, but that both Stowe Area Association and Revitalizing Waterbury, I think we see that as a real important thing for us to be involved in going forward. So would you agree with that, Carrie?
Yeah, I would say definitely. I think you know, it is that balance of how many voices can help make the impact, and also recognizing where we can have successes and where others are taking the lead in those successes, that we can help communicate that forward. I think the other piece, just to add to the conversation around this collaboration, is also in programming, and that's why this opportunity today to bring people together. I know we all have a lot of busy things going on. I know some of the pain points that are happening, and part of this is there future programming that can help support some of these things. And you know, we're not going to be able to solve every single crisis out there, but we can help move the needle in a direction that can support. Austin, did you have more to say? I don't know if your hand was up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one thing to think about coming out of this crisis, I think, you know, we live in a state that is really cognizant of wealth inequality in our country, and, you know, some is critical of what some big business has done in our nation. However, we live in a state that also has 79% of its businesses under 10 employees. And I think that there's been a long disconnect in Montpelier over when they pass legislation, who they're actually affecting. They'd like to pass legislation and pat themselves on the back for sticking it to the big guys, but there aren't really big guys in Vermont. They're sticking it to the little guys a lot of the time. And I think this crisis has really brought to the forefront how small our Vermont businesses are, how intertwined in their communities they are, and how without them, the communities are places that people don't really want to live in. You know, I think for a lot of folks this year, losing, you know, just insert business name here, from their community would mean losing a large part of their community and the reason why they love living in their community. So as we go out of this crisis, I think one of the biggest things folks should really do is just drill down on their narrative about, you know, who you are, what your part was, what it was like for you to be in this crisis, what you did. I know, like, you know, a lot of folks on this call donated to food banks when they had to close their doors or things like that. You know, how you took care of your employees. Just make sure that those stories are like there and that you're repeating them going out, because I think this could be an opportunity and the start of just kind of reworking the relationship of the Vermont legislature and the business community. Because, you know, all you folks are small businesses just trying to make it in your community.
Yeah, some good points, Austin. You know, it is interesting to listen to like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce company line, and I'm kind of like cringing sometimes when I hear this and how not apropos it is to Vermont in a lot of ways. So I think it's great to make that distinction. You know, we're coming up on an hour here, and you know, again, I'd really like to get a sense, you know, some engagement from the rest of the folks in terms of other things that you might want to talk about. We had thrown out there the idea of kind of best practices, collaborative work that we can do as a region. Maybe how you're transforming back to the quote new normal, how you're flexing your business. You know, what's exciting you about the summer? What are you worried about? Any thoughts from anyone? All right.
I would just also open up an opportunity to say, if there's we've got a short time period, our hope is reopening. So within, just think if there's a current challenge that you're facing, this is an opportunity to hear from your peers and be able to talk about that. And this is the room for that. So that's where future programming can happen here for it, but also if there's something immediately coming up for you, that could help with the conversation.
Hey, it's Jason here from Worthies. There's a few things that we are doing, and I'm getting really excited for. Our online ordering is actually doing really well, to the point where we actually have to turn it off sometimes. So that's really good. We're planning on expanding our patios. Outdoor dining is going to be huge this year. We're having music events. Usually at the Mad River Valley area, or in the Waitsfield location, we've done once a month. We're only going to do 4 this summer, but they're going to be really good. We've paired up with local breweries, Lawson's and collaborative to do stuff to get people to our area. We're doing the same thing in South Royalton. We're doing the same thing in Woodstock. But yeah, I mean, this summer is going to be great. Like Austin said about the pent up frustration of not traveling, I can already feel it down in the Woodstock location. There's so many people traveling. The influx of new people. I mean, the population of Woodstock has gained so many people. We have 200 new kids in our school district. Those people love to eat, dine, and almost to the point where I probably should open another restaurant in Woodstock to alleviate some of the pressure of the Worthy Kitchen, but I just don't have the staff for that. And I don't want to work every day of the week. But you know, this summer is going to be really exciting. We're hopeful. We think staff will come around, and everybody's just I think we're all just kind of waiting. And if it would be more than 33 degrees out, I think everybody would be a little bit happier than we have been this last week of the cold. But I just want to say, you know, the stuff we're going to do this summer is going to be fun. Events, and you know, I can't wait to get back to a full restaurant. I don't know if we're going to add any more seats in the Waitsfield location because it's kind of nice. It was a little too crowded, but I know down in South Royalton and Woodstock, we'll add more seats back. The patio here is going to get a little bigger, a little nicer. So those are some exciting things that we're going to be focusing on. And I can't wait to see what some of the other restaurants are going to do also around here.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. That's some good points, and you'll be glad to know we just went out after getting vaccinated. We went down to Philadelphia to see our daughter, and we were eating out aggressively, and we were doing a lot of revenge tourism. And I'm actually going out next week to visit my boys out in Washington State, and I'm ready to go eat out too, I'm fattening them up, getting fattened up early for the summer. So, so any other thoughts from anyone at all? I don't want to belabor things too much, but you know,
Roz has her hand up.
Yeah.
Hi. Yep. Hi. By way of introduction, because I don't know many people on here, so I'm going to go ahead and assume they don't know me either. My husband and I have Stowe Sandwich Company. We also have our food trailer, the Lunchbox, and we do some cooking for people under the kitchen catering, which also does so send some stuff over to Stowe Kitchen and Bath in their little cafe and that kind of thing. So we are small and we're not letting people in just yet. We're getting everything ready on the inside. We're waiting for all of our employees to have their second shot so that we can let people in safely. So that'll happen really soon. But the biggest thing that we do is we refer people. We have a small kitchen and a small footprint for lunch. And when our wait is getting close to an hour, that's a long time to ask somebody to wait for lunch. So the first thing we tell every member of our team is you let them know an accurate time. And then you say, hey, what kind of food are you looking for? And you steer them to someone else. If someone comes in the morning and we have hot coffee and they're looking for a latte, you go, hey, what kind of drink are you looking for? And you steer them to someone else. So for us, that's like the biggest thing that we can do. And we rely on social media a lot for that. So we're always checking to see who's open on what days, what are they serving, what specials are going on, what events are happening, because it's just a ton of word of mouth. And if you're a tourist and you're coming into town, you might not know all the places to check before you get here, but you're definitely going to talk to people. So that's a big thing that we do. And I just wanted to lead that into saying thanks for everyone making sure that they're putting out there, hey, we're open this, hey, we've expanded our hours, hey, this is the specials that we have going on, because that's really how we're communicating with the people that we know. So thanks for that. Keep that going. I hope everybody has a great summer. I know we're going to have a great summer, so it's going to be all good. And thanks for doing the call. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Roz. And your sandwiches are great. I ate there the last time I went skiing up in Stowe. So I have been eating aggressively. I never stopped, I guess. Are there any other things, Carrie talked about programming going forward. And, individually, our organizations have tried to do business education workshops and other types of professional development kinds of things. And we feel like maybe together we can do these are the sorts of things that we can do together. Are there any particular topics that people would be interested in us doing professional development or business education programming about?
Eric, if no one pipes up, I do want to share that we're talking about doing an events discussion, exactly like this one, but a regional discussion about event and event planning. And Claudia, I really picked up on a lot of what you said. So that hopefully will be happening by the end of May. Keep your eyes open.
That would be super wonderful, because desperate need for any form of help or other people doing what I'm doing, because it's a lot right now.
It
Just
is.
thank you. My email is in there. So
As a follow-up to that, Karen, I would, we had an event discussion, events and arts, event spaces discussion for our tourism caucus last Friday. So if people want to watch that, that was Higher Ground, Alex Crothers from Higher Ground, the Champlain Valley Expo, and Vermont Symphony, and sort of their outlook and plans and how what they're feeling right now. Paramount was unable to make it at the last minute, but if you want to just view that, it's only an hour, but it was a really informative discussion. So, and we learned a lot as legislators about how they're feeling. So
that's great. Thanks, Heidi.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. We appreciate you being here too. And I really also appreciate how much you've done representing the business community, throughout this past year. And I read your emails, not living in your district. I get so much out of it. So thank you for doing that. You represent us well.
Mark had his hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about employee retention tax credits.
And maybe along that same topic, just having an informational session completely focused on PPP forgiveness application and talking through how, specifically for that scenario, but I think just having regularly conversations surrounding whatever we're navigating. So right now, a lot of us are navigating PPP round 1. We'll be doing PPP round 2. I think you have 10 months after your final date to apply. But I know that, we almost made the mistake at one of our businesses that we had enough labor dollar that we were like, oh, it's easy. We'll just use all labor dollar. But what was pointed out was that employee retention tax credit is a very real program that you have up to 3 years. It might have changed to 5 years now to apply for 2020, and it's continued into 2021, but it's per employee, 10,000, maximum 10,000, you get 50%. It's a tax credit of $5,000, up to $5,000 per employee, but you can't use the same labor dollars for PPP forgiveness. So the mistake you could make is that you put all labor into PPP, which is quick and easy, but then you lose the ability to use those labor dollars for the employee retention tax credit. It's tens of thousands of dollars for just one of my restaurants. So I think that that's something where having a professional that knows those programs and can explain how to maximize each one of those, and really that has to happen now for those specific ones, for anyone's doing their first round PPP. So the way to maximize it is you look at outside the window of your PPP program, try to get every employee that got to 10,000, take their labor dollars for your window during PPP, and then look to see how close you were to maximizing it. But stuff like that, I think a lot of people just don't know. And I talked to a lot of other owners that it's really hard to navigate some of that. So I think having a professional and getting someone that can really speak to it would be important.
Thanks, Mark. Anything from anyone else? Carrie and Karen, do you want to, and just in wrapping up, any comments from you folks?
I was just going to say thank you so much for the panelists today. It's really helpful insight from all the different, from the business owners to more related to the legislative updates. So just really appreciate you taking the time. And we really value this partnership and look forward to seeing how we can continue to work together.
Yeah, and I would add that, we're all available. So if something pops into your brain after we get offline, we've asked you lots of questions, please reach out. I think that we're trying to meet regularly, at least once a month. We are absolutely committed to making this partnership work moving forward without a pandemic, just because we really work well together, and it's been exciting to do that. So please reach out if you have anything or any questions or any ideas.
Thanks a lot, Karen. Thanks a lot, Carrie. And with that, again, thanks everyone for participating. Really appreciate the level of engagement that we got. And like I said, as Karen mentioned, we're really excited about this collaboration. And if you have thoughts and ideas, please let us know. And we'll be in touch real soon. Thanks so much, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks so much.